Out tomorrow, the day we have waited.
Sorry, I wasn't here on Monday, so I wanted to kind of do it real big.
That was a howl from the future. That was a next-gen howl.
Yep. That is, there's so many teraflops of howl and all of that going on there. It's great.
Are teraflops still a thing?
I don't know. That's the last terminology I could think of, so.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, PS4 is officially out as of last night at midnight. Jeff Keighley rang it in. It is not official until Jeff Keighley tells us it is so.
And he definitely did ring it in. And in fact, the kid who got the first one at the official Sony event is a regular Giant Bomb user named Joey Chu, who has approached me at multiple events. I've talked to him before. I saw him. He was on a bunch of news stories as the first kid to get a PlayStation 4. So congratulations, Joey.
I was going to say, when Jeff and I were kind of idly watching that in the office while he was finishing up the campaign for Killzone, and all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I was mostly just looking over and watching the trailers that were debuting, and that guy showed up, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I saw him in a picture with, like, all of you in New York.
Yep.
So that's awesome. Giant Bomb invades all facets of next gen, including launch windows. So you pre-ordered one from Amazon. So is your show up yet in the morning, or are you thinking later today?
At some point, the UPS guy might show up during this broadcast, in which case I'm dropping everything. Fuck this. I'm running it. I'm going to get it.
That's great. I can hold before
it. It is out for delivery right now, so I'm just waiting for it to show up.
I had this moment where I was weirdly rooting for my PS4 not to ship because I got a message from a Giant Bomb user that there were a lot of people freaked out. A lot of people ordered over Amazon. Like, I think probably more so than any other hardware launch. I saw a lot of people just say, screw the lines, I'm ordering online, I can wait the couple extra hours because playing at midnight isn't really that fun anyway because you're dead tired. And mine had not switched over. It said, estimated on Friday, but it's Thursday at 4 p.m. and it has not shipped. And a Giant Bomb user had emailed me and said, like, oh, well, that happened to me, and then it updated to say November 19th, even though I bought the launch edition, and they gave me, a big fat gift certificate. And I was like, well, mine's shipping home anyway. I can't use it. I would certainly take an Amazon gift certificate, but it shipped. So mine is sitting in a pile of things that my brother may tear open, but my guess is he won't touch it. So mine is at home, and I did not get my Amazon gift certificate. But by all accounts, it seems like most people are getting theirs on time. There doesn't appear to be, from what I can tell, like any sort of real legitimate mass hysteria or problems over this launch so far.
No, the only people I've heard who had their orders messed with are people who had, like, outdated payment information or something from the pre-order they made, like, 6 months ago.
Oh,
so,
that would be horrible.
Yeah, that happened to a couple people I know.
I could totally see how that would happen, because I imagine you just got maybe some expired card, or you forgot that you have a certain one preferenced an expired card as you. Oh, that sucks. That's a horrible thing to wake up to.
So the good news is that it sounds like all the people who had that issue and got it resolved with Amazon will still get it by, like, Monday or Tuesday next week, but it's still, like, that sucks if you were especially wanting to get one today. Like, if that had happened to me, I'd be totally screwed, because, yo, check out all these games, son. I got PS4 games for days.
Damn.
And I got nothing to play them on yet. I'm gonna make it rain. I'm making it rain PS4 games. Look at that. More PS4 games. Woo!
You got that knack?
I got that knack. I got that Battlefield. I got some of that Just Dance 2014. Check that shit out. Woo!
I'm terrified. You're drowning in PS4 games. You're drowning.
I know. I really am.
PS4
I'm
games.
reviewing at least like 3 or 4 of them, so that'll be fun.
Which ones do you think you're gonna tackle?
So I'm gonna do knack. That's the first thing on my list, and then I've got NBA 2K14. I've got Madden, and if I can find the time to do it, since no one else has. I may try and do Assassin's Creed 4. We'll see if I can squeeze that in there.
Yeah, I walked into the office yesterday, and Brad just looked at me. He had a twinkle in his eye, and he said, "Here you are." And he put a copy of Super Mario 3D World on my desk.
Nice.
Told me by next Friday, spit some words out.
You lucky son of a bitch.
Well, of course, on the flip side of that is for a hot minute, I thought it was possible that I might review it, and I really should have asked before I came out here because I was going to put my Wii U in my bag because now I will play a significant chunk of that game and then have to play it all over again because none of those saves will transfer to my machine because there's no way to do that on a Wii U. So, damnation.
But when you go back, you'll get to play with your friends in co-op. So it's like a whole different experience, right? You'll get to do a whole thing with like your wife and your brother and anyone else you want to invite over.
Yeah, whatever. I'm sure the game is going to be great. I haven't really touched it yet, but I am super excited too. And it's cool to be back in the office. That there's something to be said for being around here for the next gen stuff specifically. That like I had a chance to go to the midnight launch last night out here in San Francisco. There were two major midnight launches, one in New York and one in San Francisco. And the New York one was certainly a grander affair. The one in San Francisco, they had kind of cordoned off, half of a block and out front of the big San Francisco GameStop, which is relatively new. If you've been to San Francisco in the last 5-10 years, the one that used to be there is no longer there. They tore that down and put in a 2-story one. It's still not that big for being the only place to buy video games in San Francisco, which is constantly sort of a thing that I think surprises people and also still blows my mind that your options are mediocre GameStop and then like really dirty, skanky Best Buy on Geary, like kind of way out of the way from downtown. So I went there, and it was interesting. You get a real eclectic mixing pot of folks at things like that. They were giving out a lot of free stuff, so naturally, like the first guy I ran into, who also was a Giant Bomb user, just could not be carrying more stuff like Destiny and Killzone and Knack and everything. I was like, oh man, you're big PlayStation fan. You here to buy a PS4? Nah. Free stuff? Yes.
Wow.
Free stuff. There were a lot of people there. I mean, they had I believe a designer from Bungie signing Destiny posters. They had an NFL sideline reporter, which was weird.
That is weird. Which NFL sideline reporter?
The woman that's in Madden. I don't know if that.
Oh, helps. Alex something or other. I can't remember her name, but I know who you're talking about. I think it's the CBS woman. So yeah.
I thought that was just very strange. I mean, maybe she is known and I just don't. It more just felt like, who can we get?
Sure.
And then that woman showed up. Yeah. And then they had Mr. Sadface from Infamous. I forget that's the actual designer's name, but the guy who looked, who was depressed on stage as he was explaining his game. And the
guy who was talking about basically the end of the fucking world as he was getting ready to introduce Infamous. That guy, that guy was really something.
Yeah, before introducing a superhero game.
Yeah.
And it was, what I have to admit, it felt like a pretty muted event. And anecdotal evidence is not, is very small sample size. But I was in. I was in town for the PlayStation 3 launch, and that thing was way bigger. There were way more people. It was way crazier. It's hard to tell, and I have to imagine there are many more people like me that just chose to buy online or to pick up in store. But I don't know. I was kind of surprised when I got there, and you could, up until about 45 minutes, at least that was the last time I checked, still show up to that store and grab a pre-order ticket and buy a machine. So it wasn't just the allocation of the store. I'm kind of curious, other folks, that are watching, send me a message, get a sense of like how other people's launches went. Against, anecdotal evidence isn't, can't draw real conclusions, but I don't know. We can start this, it has begun.
Yes.
In the words of Shang Tsung, and now we can start piecing together what exactly this next-gen puzzle is. People are buying stuff, and we start to actually put the rubber to the road on speculation about what impact, tablets and phones have had on purchasing interest in these machines. But definitely heard a whole lot of apathy over launch lineups. Was a lot of people, I pre-ordered both, and then I canceled one because the games just aren't there. I was gonna get Watch Dogs, but now the Watch Dogs was one I heard more than once was, they were already there picking up a PS4, or if they were just there for the swag, Watch Dogs was a game that they felt like that motherfucker kicks off next gen. Screw these other guys. And when that went out the window, a real interest in next gen went out the window too, at least until the spring, which I think is completely reasonable. I think if you want to wait to the spring, that is sort of a great time to jump in and let idiots like us deal with potentially faulty launch hardware and bumpy firmware and weird hiccups in network infrastructure and all that nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, if I were not doing, this review crunch and trying to get as much of this shit done, for work as possible around this time, I would most definitely not be buying one until at least March. Because, yeah, like you said, Watch Dogs is gone, and, it's funny, you don't see a lot of people complaining about the fact that Drive Club got delayed, which is, unfortunate for them.
Well, it doesn't really have a whole lot of name recognition.
No, it doesn't, and that's the thing, is that even when this launch lineup was better, it was still not that great. It was Watch Dogs. It was maybe you're super into Killzone, so you really want to play that Killzone. Maybe you are a console Battlefield player, so you really want to play the next-gen version of that. But, other than that, there's really not that many games on the PS4. Resogun sounds super awesome, and I'm looking forward to playing that one. But, other than that, Contrast sounds like it's okay, but kind of buggy, there's some other downloadable stuff that sounds like it's okay or pretty good, but not anything that's really that spectacular. And you look at the Xbox One lineup, it's better. There's more exclusive franchise stuff there. There's Forza, which I can't imagine being anything other than very good. Dead Rising, up in the air on what that one will be, but at least it's a brand people recognize. It's a game people have liked, quite a bit over the years. Killer Instinct, give or take, whatever. But then all the multi-platform stuff pretty much is on Xbox One as well. And then, of course, Zoo Tycoon 3, which, I know everyone has been, waiting with bated breath for. So, they have the slightly better lineup, I think, in terms of games, but neither of them are really that spectacular. And, if you're waiting because the games aren't there, you're probably doing the right thing. We're the dumbasses here. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
I don't think it's a big surprise that, everyone's... I'm going to generalize for a moment, but everyone's favorite Xbox 360 game, Geometry Wars. Everybody's favorite PlayStation 3 game, Super Stardust HD. Not a big shock that a smaller scale game that shows off some of the fancy tech, that you don't normally think about, because you normally think of a game like Rise, which have not played, have no sense of what that's going to be.
Exists.
Right. I think that's probably safe for most people. It's not. I don't think it's a big shock that these smaller, focused, arcadey games that do what they want to do very, very well, and also show off the crazy advances in particle effects and things like that. That those work the best at launch, because that just makes sense for a lot of the madness that goes into launch. But there was a lot of news last night.
Yeah.
So we should cover some of that stuff.
Let's do that, and then I can talk a little bit about the event that we all went to and stuff too.
Right, that's true. And also, if people want to start shooting questions in the chat, obviously you will have all day to do that as well when our big PlayStation 4 live stream kicks off at 11 a.m. PST is the current plan, bearing any technical difficulties. But we can go ahead and chat it up with you guys before all that happens if you want to shoot stuff into the chat. So.
Sure.
But it's launch, so there are headlines abound of folks running into some isolated PS4 issues. PSN was briefly down last night, right around the time that the East Coast machines went on sale. But by all accounts, that was maybe for an hour, 90 minutes, and that came back up. So, the true test for me on Sony's promise of improved infrastructure is when I take that bad boy home and I check the download speeds, because that has always been a problem with me, even connected directly to Ethernet on my PlayStation 3. I have pretty much everything over Wi-Fi, but that bad boy was connected, and it would still produce horrendous download speeds that I just could not, for the life of me, figure out. I know Jeff had that problem as well, but I've been hearing, again, anecdotally, that people that had issues with the PS3 download speeds have not had them on PS4. So I'm crossing my fingers that is something that is across the board, because, man, it sucked when I played Vanquish and it could not pull down a 5 megabyte patch because it just told me it was going to take 30 minutes to do so. So I said, I'll just not apply that patch.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I will say is that from what I saw of the system, and granted, this was running before anyone really had their system, so their servers probably weren't nearly as taxed, but when they were jumping around in the PlayStation 4 interface, when they were showing it to us, jumping in and out of the store, getting different, trying to get around, it was much, much snappier than anything on the PS3. Like, everything on there seemed like it was running much faster, and, you know, if that transfers to the download speeds as well, that would be spectacular. Because I also have had pretty nightmarish download issues with the PS3, and if they have fixed that even a little bit, then that will be a huge improvement. Insofar as the system's breaking goes, it sounds like, you know, if there are issues, it's been stuff mostly pertaining to like HDMI ports and things not quite working there. I guess Kotaku's unit was actually able to be fixed by Sony when they brought it back to the event at New York, so they got that one working, but I think IGN had another one that broke. And then there have been a couple people that I think on various forums that got early units that said there were other issues that were not related to HDMI.
I mean, a lot of them could be fixed, though. By accounts of what I was reading was that some of them were like weird HDMI port problems of things getting bent pretty easily, which I believe was Kotaku's issue, and then also some of the pins disappeared. So, you know, and then a lot of them, which was funny to watch as they went out early, and then you just had people on Twitch streaming themselves trying to fix this while also clearly reading their address out loud to a Twitch stream of 3,000 people.
Not a great idea.
As their buddy on Skype screams, "Don't do that," and then they continue to do that. You know what? More than anything, that stuff is my favorite part of these launches, is just that kind of madness. And it's not like a lot of people actually had success booting the machine into a safe mode and doing some trickery there that didn't seem that complicated. No, you know, Shuhei Yoshida put out a sort of a statement, insofar as statements are comments on Twitter, saying they believe there were isolated incidents, and it sounded like there were some people having issues with the Taco Bell promotion version, so it's possible that it even could just be a certain batch of machines. But today is kind of take whatever you see for a grain of salt until we have the weekend, because once people start putting these machines through their paces, we'll get a sense of where that's actually at. And even then, the Red Ring issue, most people thought was just isolated at the beginning as well, and that just became sort of a pervasive thing over time. So a lot of these issues don't necessarily come up until we see like some real weight, some real load put on these machines, and we're not going to know that for weeks or months ahead.
Load. So yeah, that stuff's kind of happening, but we'll know more soon. In terms of news that came out last night, some new games were talked about. There is a new Uncharted coming for the PlayStation 4. Popular video game developer announces new game in popular video game franchise for new popular video game platform, and people are stunned. Patrick, how excited and surprised are you by that?
Here's my theory.
Uh-huh.
This is unsubstantiated.
Sure.
Is that, of course, you want brand awareness you want new IPs, but you also want to balance that with new brands.
Right.
And Naughty Dog just did a huge new IP. Whether or not it gets a sequel, even though they said they don't want to do one, my guess is we get a Last of Us sequel. Although it'd be cool if they did something completely different.
Well, they got that DLC coming at least, so.
Yeah, and my guess is that the reason it's called Uncharted is because it is going to be tonally a complete reboot. I do not think that we carry over with Nolan North. I do not think that we carry over any of those characters that we've come to know. I think the reason this is basically the Uncharted, which is to say it's an Uncharted game, which means it'll have a lot of, I think, the same sort of setups that drove those games. But yeah, I think Chris Plant actually maybe put it best on Twitter that it's going to get Nolaned, which is it'll probably get a little bit more serious. It'll probably be less jokey. And then I think that is probably the direction they go in, where they can essentially make a new game without making a new game. So they start with a similar premise, but try and reinvent it from the inside as opposed to starting completely from scratch. It doesn't mean it won't take place in the same world. So, I mean, it's possible that maybe there'll be some crossover. I think it would be kind of crazy if Drake didn't show up at some point in the game, but who knows? I mean, Naughty Dog is clearly a studio willing to take some risks by doing a new IP at the very end of the generation, and Uncharted strikes me as it's a new game, just kind of called Uncharted.
My thing is this: I get that is probably, that seems like a likelihood, that direction they're going in. The evidence would certainly, what little evidence there is, like that would make some sense. I don't know if I really want to play a darker, grittier version of Uncharted. Like, I don't know if that's something that really interests me, because I feel like the darker, grittier aspects of that series, what few there are, since it is kind of like, a little bit more of a tongue-in-cheek kind of action-adventure series, aren't anywhere near my favorite parts of those games. Like, I like the jokey, Nathan Drake. I like Nolan North's voice work. I like the slightly more frivolous aspects of that series, and the idea of a really moody, sort of grim Uncharted, which again, we're just projecting here, we don't know exactly what this is going to be, is not that appealing to me at all. I don't know if you feel the same way, but like, I feel like, one, it's super early to be rebooting a series that really has only existed on the PlayStation 3. And two, I just, tonally, I like that they had, like The Last of Us to me was them getting, I thought, getting their sort of grim, dark storytelling, rocks off. Like, they got that stuff out of their system. If they're going to do another grim, kind of dark, gritty game, then that would not excite me nearly as much as the potential of doing, a much bigger, more bombastic, crazier version of the fun Uncharted that I've been playing for the last 3 games.
I think both of those are completely reasonable scenarios. I guess part of the reason I subscribe to my crazy theory is that I don't know if I want to play another Uncharted game that is just Uncharted 4.
I mean, sure, yes, I get that, and I realize that they have been doing this for, this same kind of tone thing for about 7 years, since that's how long the PS3 was around, but I don't know, I'm just, there are so many dark, gritty versions of games around these days that I kind of liked the aspect of Uncharted that made it a little, I don't know, just a little bit more fun and freewheeling, like, I don't need everyone to be sad and angry all the time. Like, that was really interesting, 5 years ago when everyone was doing, 4 years ago when everyone was doing gritty reboots. Tomb Raider was a good gritty reboot of a series that I liked a lot, but that had also gotten super stale, and that was actually a different, fresh thing. I don't think Uncharted has gotten that stale as it is, so that's me.
I do like a theory in the chat. A couple people have floated it of, well, what if at the end of this new Uncharted, Nolan North causes the fungus outbreak that begins The Last of Us? That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I'd be super into that. Let's tie it all together. Let's do it. Let's do the Watch Dogs AC tie together thing with that. Let's tie all franchises with the same universe. Everything's the same universe.
Well, that's what Namco Bandai was trying to do for a while, right? They were trying to explain that all of their IPs somehow existed in the same universe. They had a term for it that made me laugh. I mean, you know what?
Sorry, people are saying it's weird that we're judging a game we don't know anything about. I'm not judging anything. I'm talking about a theory. That's it. I'm commenting on a theory. It is only a theory. We have no idea what it's going to be. We'll see what it is.
It's early.
It's super early.
It's early in the morning is what I meant. So I can say what I want. And
totally.
You know what? My guess is we see a proper trailer at the VGX, I guess is what they are called now. I mean, that was very much, it felt like the beginning of a much larger teaser. And Naughty Dog has shown stuff before at that event, which is not far off. So, we may have a lot more information on that soon. But, if the worst case scenario is that Naughty Dog, an exceptionally talented developer, is making another Uncharted, there are worse things in the world than that, because it will be a fun, entertaining game. I only just look at the talent of folks like Amy Hennig and, like to see them do other stuff than the further adventures of Nathan Drake. So if they do that, I know it'll still be good. Then you look at The Last of Us and be like, damn, like if they wanted to go do something lighthearted that was in a completely different vein, like a reboot of Michael Jordan, Chaos in the Windy City.
Totally.
Amy Hennig's first magical project. Like, who wouldn't want that?
Was that really her first magical project? Did that really happen? Oh, that's amazing. That's really great.
I talked to her about doing a feature on it, and that will happen at some point in the future.
Awesome. Also announced new Towerfall coming to PS4 and PC. I have not played Towerfall yet. Have you gotten to do that?
I have a copy of the IGF build, which has some of the single player and stuff like that, but I am working on getting permission for us to maybe do something with that. But that game, by all accounts, despite being an Ouya exclusive, is supposed to be a badass multiplayer game that is getting proper co-op and single player sort of quest or campaign for the Ascension Ascension version that is coming out early next year.
Right.
But everyone I know that's played that game fucking loves it. So I think that is a key pickup for Sony in at least, sort of, having just spent $400 on that machine. Like, that game looks really good, and hopefully it is as good as people have suggested. And I thought that was and you know what? Goddamn, whatever. I don't know if indies are actually going to sell this machine.
Sure.
I love that you watch any major Sony event, no matter how big, and they're putting shit like Octodad and Towerfall front and center, giving them just as much, if not more, screen time than what they're giving for their own big blockbuster AAA games. And I choose to not be cynical about it, and that is just awesome. That just is so damn cool. And even though 99% of those games are also coming to the PC, so they are not exclusive in our traditional sense, they don't get the same level of platform and microphone that they do when a corporation like Sony is putting hundreds of millions of dollars behind this stuff. And, I just can't help but tip my hat to them, or at least, be happy for those developers and those games. These games that, I champion myself and I'm a big fan of myself. I cannot do what Sony can do in terms of informing a much wider audience, and I can only hope that pays off for those games, because it's a cool thing to see, and it impresses me every time they do it, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it's a platform. It's them actually getting, stage time and presentation time, and actually, getting out in front of these large audiences. Whereas, when they're on PC, if you're in the Steam store, you'll get a little promotion there or whatever, but it's not like, there's a major executive up on a conference stage saying, "Yo, check it out, Octodad, son, play this on our system." And, at the event they had on Monday, like, even all the different indie games that were coming all had their own little suite room alongside, the room that had Need for Speed and the room that had Knack and all that stuff. Like, everyone had their space, and they were all being, people were being led around to all those different places so that the press could come check that stuff out. I got to watch Jeff play Octodad for the first time at that thing. They showed a different level, which was still great. Everything I've seen in that game so far is still super great. And it was great to watch Jeff try that for the first time, being slightly skeptical, and then just seeing a big old doofy grin on his face as he was playing that thing, And I imagine there are a lot of press people that haven't had a chance to check that stuff out. So it's really great the way they're getting that stuff out in front of people.
Yeah. We should also mention that Naughty Dog did also announce Left Behind, an Ellie-focused Last of Us DLC that is not a spoiler for the game. It is set before the events of The Last of Us, I believe. So some people were saying in the comments, I cannot substantiate this, that there was a prequel comic that it sounds like this lines up pretty specifically with. That may or may not be true, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they had plucked some of that stuff, because my guess is I'm pretty sure they were overseeing the sort of extraneous material for their lore. But the idea of an Ellie-focused DLC, I think, is a fantastic idea.
Oh, I totally agree. She is a character that, for as much as she is kind of center stage in The Last of Us, like, I always wanted to kind of know more about. So I'm glad that they're putting her, at the forefront of that DLC.
Yeah, and it's a chance to spend a little more time in that world, whether or not they choose to visit it again. But Last of Us was absolutely one of my favorite games this year, and so before that PS3 gets put away in a closet, that is going to be, at least one more good reason to pull that out and give it a shot. And I knew it seemed unreasonable, but I have to at least say that I was kind of hoping they were going to announce a PS4 version of The Last of Us. Yeah, I couldn't help but play The Last of Us, and it's a beautiful goddamn game, and Naughty Dog, showed why they are the premier technology developer on Sony platforms once again. But you could see where the stitching was coming undone. You could see where they were pushing that machine as far as they could take it. And it wasn't, sometimes you would squint and it'd be like, if there was a PC version of this, just if it ran at a slightly better frame rate and was a little cleaned up. And so I know it's crazy to have expected them to do that, but man, it would have been cool if there was a just slightly cleaned up PS4 version of that. And I don't know, maybe I'll hold out hope for that. In
Last
the
of Us
future.
Game of the Year edition with DLC coming in a year or so. It worked for put together for the PlayStation 4. It could happen.
Yeah, it could. I'll cross my fingers. Next, that wouldn't. Yeah, someone in the chat saying next year might make more sense for that. And you
Sure.
are probably right.
Probably. Other than this,
well, we got a release date for Infamous.
We do.
So it moved a little outside the February window, I think, which was originally when we thought that was going to drop, and it will come out on March 21st. So March is stacked, as Marches are in the past, but do not get too excited, because if Marches in the past have taught us anything, it's that half of that stuff is going to move yet again.
Yeah.
Right now it includes South Park, Titanfall, Infamous.
Destiny's later.
Destiny's later,
That's
but my guess is the beta. They haven't set a date yet, but the beta will probably have rolled out by then.
Right.
But March tends to get pretty stacked because financial years end for a lot of publishers on March 31st, so they want to get games out to help sort of buck their financials. And my guess is that Infamous makes that date, if only because PlayStation is very important to Sony going forward, and having the first major first-party title post-launch out is probably pretty key, and also in avoiding Nintendo's own problems with not having quality software out at launch. And not that Sony or Microsoft doesn't care, but Nintendo is also, I think, sometimes such a stickler for that stuff that they hurt themselves in the process by not getting that stuff out a little sooner. And I'm a little more confident that Infamous will actually make it out.
Yeah, Brad and I got to play a little bit at that event. There was some new stuff that showed up. It's really good. It's really good. It looks spectacular. It's definitely of the first party games, like more so than Knack and Killzone. Certainly, it's the one that has definitely looked the most like, oh wow, okay, they're actually doing something more significant with this hardware. Which isn't to say those other games don't look good, but there isn't that kind of leap moment of this runs really smoothly. There's a ton of effects and the world. There's tons of different structures you can blow up. It looks like a really good playground. You're going to be able to do some really cool destructive stuff in that game. And I still don't know a damn thing about the story other than second son. So you are son guy who can steal other people's powers, but. They're being purposely cagey about that. They specifically said, we don't want to give much of the plot away. We want people to kind of discover this stuff for themselves. So they're trying not to show that off as much as possible.
That's cool. I mean, I think
it plays really well.
They can kind of get away. I mean, next gen stuff doesn't need to sell itself on story, and that game, some of those effects look pretty goddamn cool. So I think they can kind of skate by on just looking badass, and that being enough of a reason. For people wanting to purchase that game.
Totally.
So that's cool. Did you that covers pretty much everything other than really minor stuff at that at Keeley's thing last night. The beta for Destiny is going to launch first on PS3 and PS4. Codes are floating around for that if you pay attention, but they still haven't said when that is actually going to come out. But I would guess March, April, around the time that Titanfall and people are starting to play multiplayer games on their machines seemed like a pretty reasonable window for that. But you were in New York with the other guys and actually had a chance to play a shitload of stuff and talk to some folks. So how was that?
It was good. I mean, we ran around a lot, and so we didn't get to sit in on as many demos as perhaps we would have liked. But we did get to check out a bunch of different stuff. We mostly tried to stay away from the games that we knew we were getting copies of. So we checked out a few indie games like Octodad. Checked out a couple of the EA things I hadn't really gotten to sit down and check out much of before, though NBA Live's still not there. So, do with that information what you will.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it wasn't at that event because it's not out until next week, and I guess they didn't want to have a demo space for that. I don't know, dude.
Alex, that sounds bad.
Yeah, I'm not putting a whole lot of faith in that game personally. But it was mostly just we got to check out some Killzone multiplayer, which I hadn't played a Killzone game since 2, I don't think. So I played some of that, and then you shoot dudes, they die. It's a first-person shooter. But more than anything else, it was a chance for us to kind of talk to people, see how they're feeling about their game's upcoming launch, the system launch, and stuff. And people are generally pretty positive. It seems like people are pretty excited about this stuff. You know, they're even with all the launch jitters going on, everyone seems pretty confident in what they're doing. You know, we obviously got the chance to talk to Shuhei and to Adam Boyes. Both of those interviews are up on the site if you haven't had a chance to check them out yet. And you know, other than that, it's, you know, it was just go around and play some games, and a lot of it was stuff that I had played before at various preview events, but you know, and stuff that I now have in hand, you know, ready to play once this thing shows up. The one thing we did get to, I don't know how much I can talk about this because the embargo's up today, but they didn't specify a time, and I don't want to piss anyone off. So I'll be vague a little bit about this stuff, but we did get to see a video presentation on Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes, which showed some gameplay in action, and then we did talk to Kojima a little bit in an interview. I don't know when we're putting that up or how that all is all going to go.
I think today. Brad was editing it at the office yesterday. So
okay.
if not today, then very soon.
So that'll go. If that goes up today, I mean the embargo's up today. What I will say is they showed off some of the gameplay. They showed how some of the, you know, basically how the Metal Gear Solid stuff translates into open world design a little bit more. And it seemed like it worked. It seemed like they had put some thought into it, and that it would still be the, you know, the Metal Gear stealth stuff, but you know, here is this much larger, you know, open space to kind of play around in and sneak around in. But if you get spotted, dudes will definitely descend on you and kill you pretty quick if you're not careful. So, you know, but Brad will have that interview up on the site. That'll probably give you a little more insight into what's going on there. Again, I don't want to get super specific because I don't know if it's time yet to talk about that or not. But
right.
that was looking. I mean, it looks real nice. So.
Yeah. Did you get a sense of like how do Sony people feel about, like, as they head into launch? Like, did you get like a general? I mean, obviously, you know, there is probably a lot of celebration because they're so close and it's over,
yeah.
and they've been working so hard. But like, what was the general vibe about how they feel about the next cycle? If you were able to pick up on anything.
The vibe I got was that there is a certain amount of nervousness that is just inherent to launching a major new thing like this, but that overall they're pretty confident in the hardware they have. They're pretty confident in the direction they're headed in. And while I definitely got the sense that, you know, even Sony was not super thrilled at the level of quality of their launch lineup, they knew what they had, and they're very, like, they know what they have coming, and they're not worried because of what they know they have coming. So yeah, there wasn't like a lot of like hand-wringing or, you know, discomfort from anyone that I talked to. Like everyone, I honestly, the publishers seem more nervous than anyone at Sony because they're just like, we have to sell these games. We need these systems to sell so we can sell these games. And you know, being that most of the games were launch games, not a lot of them were, you know, some of those games were coming in pretty hot. So you know, there's just that kind of level of nervousness around that. But I don't know. No one seemed super freaked out. No one seemed like super worried about anything. It just seemed like, you know, Sony was ready for this. They were ready for the system to be out. They were definitely ready to be done with this promotional cycle and just get it out there. And I imagine that Microsoft's probably feeling pretty much the same way right now.
You know, I'm not sure if you saw it, but there was some quotes from an interview, I believe, with Games Industry Biz floating around where they asked Shuhei Yoshida about the launch scores, basically
Right.
the reviews that have been floating in for the launch lineup, and, you know, saying that, you know, it's pretty decidedly mixed. There wasn't sort of a, with the exception of Resogun, like not a clear like hooray, like next gen is here sort of game. And I have to say, like, I really enjoy, like, people should go and read, you know, the full interview and read the excerpts that they put up, because it is about the classiest way that you can respond to that stuff, which is not to be sort of dismissive and out of hand, but is to sort of be thoughtful and genuine, that kind of tips your hand that you knew that, you know, this wasn't, you know, an across-the-board 10 out of 10 lineup. Well,
Right.
also, I don't know, it was just about the best executive answer I've ever seen to talking about review scores that isn't like what Peter Moore did to EGM when talking about Cameo and the fact that EGM
Right.
didn't like Cameo, which was, his response was to tell them to go re-review the game. And, you know, he did that in his sort of traditional Peter Moore, you know, sort of funny, sort of charming British way that he does everything he does. But, you know, that's a fairly dismissive attitude about a game. And, you know, let me see. Maybe I can pull up a quote. Let's see. With launch games, there are a lot of games coming out, so the media must be very busy going through the games quickly, and especially since the online functionality wasn't ready in the last couple of days. So we have to look at how much time they spent on what aspect of the game, and how that may be contributing to some of the lower scores. It's disappointing, but I don't think it's worrisome for the launch of the system. And it's just like, I mean, that's a little weird. I will say that one quote is a little strange, that like blaming some of the lower scores on the fact that they had people rushing, which is their own problem and fault, even if that was true, which I don't think it is.
No.
But I don't know. The quotes that I pulled up here from Joystick aren't as great. He has some better stuff in the full thing. But I don't know. I'm just not used to, Yoshida continues to surprise me as being an executive that also comes across as a human being in a way that others don't, and that in itself is a form of marketing. But I'd much rather have more of that if I have to choose.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, he's a pro, but he's definitely like a personable pro. I mean, I think you can kind of tell that in the interview we did with him. Like, we asked him, nothing too pointed, but we definitely asked him about some more personal, like, just, how are you feeling about this stuff? How's it going? And his answers were all pretty, like, he sounds like a human. He doesn't sound like, a robot businessman trying to just get you to buy his shit. Like, he sounds like a guy who genuinely appreciates the fervor around the PlayStation brand and what's going on with this launch, and someone who is, himself very excited about what they're doing. So it's always great when you can have someone like that, because those guys can, actually talk to the press and actually, can actually give answers that sound like human beings. And it's an increasingly rare thing these days in the industry to have those people. So it's always nice to be able to have those conversations.
Some people in the chat asking about and if other people want to start dropping in questions, because I think we're basically about to run out of any news to talk about.
Sure.
Whether scalpers are going to be an issue. So I'm loading up eBay and trying to get a sense of where this stuff is at. We're going to watch, okay, here is a PS4 launch edition that is counting down right now. There's 48 seconds, 50 seconds left. It is currently going for $680, so that's not nothing.
That's not nothing. I don't know. I mean, the impression I've gotten was that there is ample supply out there. There is not necessarily going to be a huge shortage of consoles available. Like, there might be for, a couple of weeks, and then, maybe around after Black Friday. But it sounds like they have supply, and it's not going to be, a constant sellout necessarily. Like, it might be hard to get in certain places, but I don't get the impression that it's just going to be, it's going to be a Wii situation where people are battering each other trying to get the last one at a Walmart somewhere.
No, and it's like, making what looks like is going to be about $200 on. Well, I guess if it gets to 680, it's almost $300. Like, that's not nothing. That's a couple of games, but it's also not the same like craziness that we saw with the Wii. And if that's already where it's at, my guess is it's only going to start coming down pretty rapidly.
Off, yeah.
Like, maybe you can, kind of double your money day one for people that don't know any better,
right?
Or just have so much disposable income that they can just go on there and just hit buy it now and not worry about it.
Yeah.
But don't be that scumbag,
right?
Because that's a skeezy thing to do, to go on eBay and do that regardless of whether you're taking advantage of people that have more money to spend. It's just, it's economics, so you can do what you want, but doesn't mean it's not skeezy. I'm going to call it skeezy.
It is definitely skeezy. Do you want to tackle any other small news stuff? There was the Nintendo Direct that happened this week,
right?
Which I'm mostly just confirmed some release dates, like Bravely Default and the new Professor Layton are both coming out in February. They showed off a bunch more Super Mario 3D World stuff, including Rosalina as a playable character. There's a new Luigi Brothers minigame that looks like the old Mario Brothers arcade game in there, which looks pretty cool.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, like that level of retro. And, it wasn't anything super revelatory. I mean, they showed some more Zelda, which, you guys have in the office there, and I've heard from most people is at least pretty great. So, nothing super exciting. I guess the biggest news was that, you can now combine your eShop wallets between 3DS and Wii U, starting with an update that I guess is coming soon. So
yeah, but your account and software is still tied to the hardware. So
yes, it is.
They are still not hitting the bare minimum of what I expect from a service in 2013. I mean, it's good. Like,
They're getting closer to the bare minimum.
Yeah, there's no way of saying that that's not progress, but like if I'm not going to sit here and applaud them for doing something that should have been there from the beginning. But I am glad it's there. But even though this idea that I'm going to play 3D World here and not be able to carry that save over is an edge case. It is, I think, indicative of the larger problems that Nintendo has that they continue to, I think, at this point, just be incapable of addressing in an efficient fashion. They're just not a company with a lot of experience doing this kind of service-based engineering, and it shows because it's just not. It's not being fixed in any sort of fashion that I think should be acceptable. These days. So it's a little frustrating, but I guess we're seeing progress. We saw some reviews drop for Link to the Past 2 / A Link Between Worlds.
Yep.
Seems like that game is pretty all right, and I'm looking forward to playing that. You know what? I was surprised. Bravely Default looks kind of cool.
Yeah, people seem really excited about that one, even though it has maybe the dumbest name I've heard in a while. Because that's a really bad name.
They dropped the second shitty part of it, which it used to be Bravely Default Flying Fairy. So it's not called that anymore. I think it's just Bravely.
Oh, I don't know. I almost think that's a little better. That's just me, though.
Yeah. You're right.
Last thing, did you see South Park this week? I know you're not a big watcher of that show, but this week's episode was particularly relevant to our interests.
I have not seen it, but obviously I need to watch it, given that they did a whole episode about the console wars being bullshit, and that's
as Game of Thrones. They did it as a Game of Thrones parody, and it's a 3-episode arc. It sounds like, so it's going to be a whole thing.
Those guys, they go through sort of dry spells, but when they hit, they hit, and
it was by far the best thing they've done all season.
And I'm looking forward to actually watching that, if only just to have an outsider sort of point out the insanity that we deal with on a daily basis and agree with us that this shit is crazy.
Oh, it's nuts. All right, should we take questions?
Yeah, I had a good one. Let's see. Oh, I lost it. Hold on. A Froof Doom asked, do you think the built-in streaming functionality will allow console streamers to truly compete with established PC streamers? I would say no, but it will probably give people a lot of a taste for what it's like to do that. We're definitely going to see a huge explosion on Twitch and Ustream. I don't think it's a shock that right now, by default, and no matter what you do, you can't flip it on, is you can't archive videos that you do on your PlayStation 4. So right now, you can stream that out, but the moment that is over, unless you were recording your PlayStation 4 separately with a capture card or an Elgato and something that was stripping the HDCP, that's not saving anywhere. That just kind of appears and then disappears into the ether. And my guess is that will change, but Twitch has historically had real load problems. Even before they're going to get an influx of millions and millions of console users. So my guess is maybe that's a precautionary method. I wouldn't be surprised if that stays off by default, and at some point they flip that on, and then, the people that want to archive can archive, but they're going to make sure that you are opting into that rather than spending their bandwidth on it. But if you looked at some of the streams that Brad was doing, or I'm sure the thousands that are happening on Twitch right now, the quality is not great. It's just okay. Resogun is a particularly bad game to use because even if you look at the stuff that we do, if you look at that Resogun quick look versus what that game looks like in real life, like even the stuff that Vinny and Drew are doing is not capable of showing off that game exactly as it looks in real life, and so that's only exasperated by the fact that the bit rates they're constraining you to on the PS4 make that even worse. So my guess is that it gives people a lot of a big taste for what it's like to do streaming. It gets a lot of new people into that arena, but ultimately there's going to always be a gap between the guys that are doing it on the console and then the guys that are doing it with their own hardware. But hopefully having this stuff built in will just mean the tools on the PC side get more competitive and easier to use, because they're getting there. They are a lot better, but it is still It's not as simple as clicking a button,
Right.
which is what it is right now on PS4 and Xbox One when it comes out. And even if the quality's less, there is a certain appeal to just clicking it and going.
Yeah, and the hope is that maybe in a year or two they'll be able to improve some of that quality stuff. Boost the servers and have more more bandwidth so that you can actually stream out maybe not quite PC quality video, but something close to it down the road. So here's hoping.
I wouldn't be shocked if there was essentially another tiered service that was like Stream Pro that
Right.
gave you more options. Because I mean, one of the things that is the reason the bitrate and the quality settings on the PS4 right now, you do have a couple quality settings, but it's basically like crappy, less crappy, okay, I guess that's watchable.
Right.
Is it impacts performance.
Yeah.
And on the PC, when you're doing that, a lot of the early days of when you start experimenting with streaming is just figuring out what your machine is capable of doing and displaying at a reasonable frame rate so that you're not dropping frames because your CPU is rendering the game and the streaming at the same time. There's a lot of trial and error that goes into that, and the reason that the quality settings are ratcheted down on the PS4 is so that that doesn't have to be an issue, that the game will always look and play exactly how it needs to, regardless of what your settings are. But maybe there is a scenario where they introduce some granularity there, and maybe they charge for it, maybe they don't. Maybe that becomes like a Plus service or an Xbox Live Gold service. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
That they introduce that so that people can, if they want to make the step up, they do have some options.
Yeah, that seems like it would make total sense.
Let's see. Black Lagoon, what's your reaction to Microsoft nabbing Jeff Rubenstein? He was a prominent PlayStation community guy who is now going over to do community for Xbox. I think that's a good pickup. Jeff is good peoples.
He is solid people all around. I've worked with him on a few different things. I feel like he might have left Sony before. Like it wasn't he just went from one to the other. I feel like there was a downtime where he wasn't working at Sony, but I don't know what he was doing.
He was working at a different tech company for the past year.
That's what I thought. So, well, hey, good for him getting back into the games business, and good luck at Microsoft there, buddy.
Let's see. What do you? Someone says 7x6 says, what do you think of Microsoft announcing next week's pre-launch to try and steal some of PS4's thunder? Did they announce an event or a stream too?
I don't recall anything, but I wasn't. This week I have not really had a lot of chance to pay attention to anything else going on other than just getting ready for these launch reviews and stuff. So I might have just missed that entirely.
Well, I mean, there are going to be Xbox One launch event to be streamed on Spike TV. So it looks like they may be doing something very similar to what Sony did, which
that would be smart.
I will say that having essentially a mini press conference as people are waiting in line and they're messing with their consoles, incredibly smart.
Oh, totally.
They showed almost nothing last night. Announcing a new Uncharted is not tipping their hand at all about what they're working on internally, but it makes you feel better about the whole thing. Like it's just really smart. And so if Microsoft was to do that, screw the fact that they're copying Sony. It's just really, really goddamn smart.
It's the right thing to copy if you're going to do it. It's like, again, you don't have to go very far. You've got the home crowd on your side. All you have to do is mention, something like an Uncharted or whatever the equivalent is for Microsoft, and you will get a huge crowd reaction. You will get people super excited at that event. It will look super good for you. So by all means, go for it.
I cannot say I've done this, but maybe you can. Wale321S, have either of you played the new BioShock DLC, Burial at Sea?
I haven't yet.
Okay.
It's been on. I have it downloaded. I've been waiting to sit down and play it. I obviously won't be able to do that until next week at the earliest at this point, but I am super looking forward to that. I've heard mixed things from people. I've heard some people say that it doesn't pay off as well as you would like, and I've heard other people say it's really great. So I don't know what to think of it going in, but I am personally very interested because I miss Rapture. I'm ready to go back to Rapture for a little bit.
Poto Skull asks, what is the first game you and Alex are going to play on your PlayStation 4? Well, I don't have my PlayStation 4, but you do. So what are you going to pop in first once the UPS guy shows up?
Knack.
Okay.
I mean, that's the one I need to review a few games, so I'm going to stick to the review games at first. I've been told by multiple people that game is like 12 hours long and weirdly difficult, so I need to throw some time in on it.
12 hours?
Yeah, and
Wow.
apparently it's that Crash Bandicoot or thing of just like it's wicked fucking hard, dude.
Hmm.
So I'm
Interesting.
gonna have to
That makes me
spend some
more
time.
interested in knack.
Yeah. I don't know if it's actually that good though. I've also heard it's kind of repetitive, so I don't know. But I'm gonna make my girlfriend play some co-op with me until she can't do it anymore, and then I'm just gonna play the rest of it on my own, I guess.
That is, you've hit the nail on the head of the thing I am the most curious about is if it's okay if that's not a particularly great single player game to me, but if it is a like charming enough co-op
Hmm.
game, I think that could be really fascinating. But at the same time, maybe my time would be better spent on what is clearly already excellent, which is like that new Lego Marvel superheroes game,
Yeah.
which is
That
supposed to be awesome. And
that Lego
I
game
need to
is
pick that
really
up.
good. I played it a while ago at a press event, and the level of detail and the humor in that game is really really good. So, and if you like Lego games, I would certainly recommend checking that one out.
Yeah. Well, I think that that
Is that
brings us
about a
to a
show?
close because I need to shower up and head over to the office to get ready for our own big stream that will
Woo!
to happen, and I'm sure we'll bring you in at some point during that stream.
Yeah,
You should try some of that remote play stuff if you can.
I
Do you
will. I
do that?
actually I did mess with that at the event. I played some AC4 on remote play, and it works very well. Like no noticeable lag, very little in the way of anything hitching on the Vita screen in terms of signal loss or anything. Like it seemed like it ran really really well.
Yeah, but
So
I want you to do this in your apartment
I
with
will.
walls. I want
I'm
so
gonna take it
okay.
to the toilet for a little while today and see how that goes.
Take it to the toilet.
Hmm.
That's a good turn of phrase. And with that is Bombin the Amos, Scoops, and the Wolf. You can tune in to Giant Bomb in just a little bit. 11 a.m. PST is going to kick off our all-day, goes until we can't stand it no more. PlayStation 4 launch stream with all of the guys. So I'm about to clean up and head to the office, and we'll see you guys again shortly. We'll bring you in at some point during the stream, but if not, on Monday morning, we will be back again. Greg Kasavin, a Supergiant Games,
Woohoo!
is going to join us, and also of the upcoming PS4 game Transistor, which looks excellent. So
Hmm.
we'll chat some game with Greg. If you have any questions, if you're not going to be able to watch live on Monday, feel free to hit me up on Twitter or PM or Tumblr. Or, you know how to get a hold of me. But we are planning on having sort of regular guests, at least for the next couple months or so, to try and shake up the Monday show, which just was a little tough because there just wasn't always something to talk about.
Right.
But we like doing it, and so I think bringing a guest in helps make that make a lot more sense. And so long as nothing falls out, I have booked solid through the end of December, and have plenty more that we can get to in 2014. But yeah, if you have any questions for Greg, shoot those over. If not, Alex, I will. Well, not on Monday. I will see you. I'll see you later today.
Later on, brother.